how to go from this to this. Hi, I'm TJ. And for those of you who don't know me, I cosplay as Asajj Ventress. And she has very white skin. And I don't. I am pretty tattooed. So naturally, I've been through the good, the bad, and the downright terrible. But I've gotten some help along the way, so I feel like I should spread the love. So starting off, these are all the products I'm going to be using in this tutorial. And remember, this is just for body painting, not for your face. I will have to do something separate for your face, but I will talk about each one of these products as I use them. It is important to set up your space, hence why I have this crappy, wrinkly sheet. But this is the Iwata Ninja Jet compressor, turned all the way up. Unfortunately, it is only up to, I think, 15 PSI, which isn't quite enough, and in hindsight would probably buy something bigger. But it does fit in my suitcase. I travel with it, and this isn't the first step that we're going to be using, but I like to have everything in arm's reach. This is the airbrush that I'm using. It's the Pesh Talon. I've loved this so far, but it does need a bit higher PSI, but I make it work, and it does work. It's just not ideal. I think it is important to note, my legs are super dry. I live in Colorado. There is no humidity here. It is like a desert. Body paint tends to stick to body hair. So it's harder to get that uniform color when you have hair or dry skin. It just is personal preference though. I just would recommend not shaving the day you're doing it, just because that could cause irritation. And you also want to moisturize the night before, because moisturizer sitting on your skin can make the paint settle weird. And it could make it not uniform. So it's just best to do everything the night before. But we're actually going to start with a water-based paint. We're only going to do one leg today, just because I like to test my paints out before we actually go ahead and go to the con. So this is a water-activated paint by Maron. And this is their Paradise line. So I do have a little cup of water here. And all you're going to want to do is take a big flat brush, which is also from the same line, dip it in water, kind of squeeze it out a little bit, and then we're gonna go ahead and activate that. And then we're just gonna brush it on. And this is gonna be our base. So this is not my final. This just makes it so you don't have to use as much of the airbrush paint, just because airbrush paint is expensive, and I do find that this leaves a barrier between my skin and the alcohol-based paint, which I don't have sensitive skin, so I will say, if you do have sensitive skin, you want to test all of this on a small area first, just to make sure you don't have any reactions. But I do have lots of tattoos, so coverage is really important to me. But this first layer, you just want to get on nice and thin. And I'm just going to do my lower leg. I'll maybe go up to my knee just so we can get in these areas, so I can see how it's going to wear and tear throughout the day. But yeah, we're just getting a good layer on here. It definitely helps if you have someone helping you, but you don't need to. You can get most of it done. I need some help on my back typically, but I can do it myself. It just isn't very fun. So we're gonna get that all nice and even. Still pretty good coverage with just this paint. But I just found the wear was not quite what I needed it to be. Like I said, when I did just use this, it was one of my first times ever doing body paint. So I could have done it wrong, who knows? Maybe it's my skin compared to other people's skin. And you don't want to get it too wet, because then it becomes pretty runny in my experience. Make sure you get in all the cracks of your skin. All right, so now that we have like a thin base here, I'm gonna let it dry. So one of these are fantastic. So this just helps. You can use a blow dryer too. Like, you really can use anything. I'm just impatient. So I do make sure everything is nice and dry because you don't want to add too thick of a layer. So I did miss a little spot here. It's a little uneven, so I'm just gonna go back and do a little bit more right there. So you can see this coverage is pretty good. You can see my Jedi tattoo there. Obviously I have a lot of tattoos on my arms. Ventress has bare arms sometimes, so we do have to get that covered. But again, try not to like go all over the place, just nice smooth strokes. So I know some people at this point will powder. I don't love putting powder in between. And when I talk about powder, I'm talking about this color set powder here. I do use this, but not yet. So as of right now, this is done, my base is down, and we can move on to the next step. So my next step I like to do, Sunset Makeup, one of my favorite companies. So this is actually what I would use on my face, is this company. They make color foundations, they're absolutely fantastic. At this step, my leg is dry, we've done the water base, this is our base, and you can still see it's quite thin, but this is our base right now. Lightly spray over the areas you retouched and let it dry. These are my new products that I'm trying. So these are alcohol-based paints. So remember, you want to use these somewhere where it's well ventilated. This is the Prime Black. I don't know what's in there. The Prime Black. It looks so strange when it's not shaken up. And this is the Prime White. So Prime White for me, for Ventress, I just think is too white. I like to have a little more of a gray tone when I do it, but you're gonna wanna shake this up. Nice and good. So this looks orange right now. Still see there's some orange there, so I'm just really trying to get all that pigment mixed in there. We're going to make a custom color. And you can see here how it's kind of streaky. This is what the airbrush can help let you avoid. So this is, again, just that water-based base. I like to use one of these little guys. All of these you can mix together to make your own custom color. So I like to always mix a little more than I need, because it's always the worst when you run out and you have to pre-mix and then you have to kind of guess what the mixture was. For Ventress, I'd like to add a little tiny bit of black. What I like to do is put it in here first so I don't dump a bunch in there. So just add a little bit at a time. So now we have our mix. To get an even more solid base, I use a brush to get this on before I airbrush. This is also helpful if you don't have an airbrush, so you can still use these paints and get the longevity that alcohol-based paints give without having to make that investment. And we're gonna go in here. And so you can actually go like this and paint this on. So the benefit of using this type of paint, yes, it's expensive, but it's not gonna transfer. You're gonna be able to go all day at the con. Sometimes I've gone a couple days and the paint's still there, it's still solid. It sucks to get off, I won't lie to you. They do have makeup removers. They don't always work perfect. So if you have some sort of wedding to go to after a con, maybe don't use this. But you can see it gets really good coverage over top of that. And so a lot of times I will go in and start brushing first. So I'm going in, brushing this, and then eventually, after I'm done all this, I'll go in and just smooth everything out with the airbrush, because it takes so long when you don't have a high PSI airbrush, which I don't have a high PSI compressor, which I would love to have, and I'm going to get, so you could airbrush it really quickly with a big fanned brush. But like I said, I'm learning, and this is all a new experience to me as well. But if you can get in Go with all the coverage here. So just really light strokes. And you don't want to go over this stuff too much that you've already painted until it's dry. So go over here. Kind of these areas you want to tap it in. All right, so now we're covered brushed wise. You're not gonna wanna mix this with water, so don't try and clean this with water right away. It's gonna clump up, it's a mess. Trust me, it sucks. So then we're gonna go in and we're gonna even everything out with this. These are what you're gonna want mostly because it's gonna fan out really nicely for that big coverage. But unfortunately, this guy is too weak of a PSI to really get that out and push that out through there. I forgot to show me putting the paint in the airbrush, but here's me testing the flow onto a paper towel before I actually go onto my skin. For me, I'm new at this, so it just makes more sense to test it on a paper towel first. But I'm just lightly going over everything that I had already done with the brush, and this is just smoothing it all out. So it's gonna make everything seamless, and I continue to do my whole leg exactly like you're seeing now. And you can go over different spots. It's totally fine with the airbrush. Just try and do a thin layer on everywhere, and you wanna not go over something when it's still wet, because that's when you get cracking. Luckily, when you're using an airbrush, it's pretty forgiving. It just takes a little bit of practice. So now that I have this covered, it's a little bit blotchy. We tried something, painted it, fine. Not a big deal. So I'm going to put my airbrush in an airbrush cleaner just because alcohol paint does dry super fast, so it makes it really difficult to clean. And anyone who does anything with airbrushing knows it's a pain in the butt to clean them. It's just part of the gig for sure. I've been using this airbrush cleaner. Just be careful, obviously. Read the labels. Did forget one thing to put out. When I was getting set up, this is the best thing ever. Love it. A little dirty, don't judge me. So these two things are, I find it evens it out, but we want to set this again. Do I know that this is the right way to do it? No. Is this how I do it? Yes. So I'm gonna go let that dry, or if you're impatient like me, blow dryer, fan, whatever. This is dry. I maybe overset things. I don't know if you need to, but it's just what I do. So we take this powder, we go in with our puff, and we go in and we just start tapping everywhere. You can go like this if you're very, very gentle, but if you start rubbing, it's gonna start taking stuff off. It's just not, maybe not the alcohol paint, but the water-based paint, I've found it definitely will kind of kick things up. And you don't want to do, like, you kind of, it's, I don't know if you remember baking your face, like back when that was popular, where you put a ton of powder on and you kind of just press it in. You can also just press it in like this. But we want to cover the entire surface area. And in my opinion, I think this is part of the reason it doesn't transfer when I do it like this. It just takes forever. And like financially, for sure, it costs, it's not cheap. I mean, cosplay is not cheap. It can be cheap, but body paint is difficult. And I think everyone can do it with a little bit of practice, but it's one of those things where when you do spend a little bit of extra cash on certain products, you're gonna get better results for sure. Aside from Sunset Makeup, which is like super great in their price points, and they're fantastic. And I can do another tutorial on my face makeup, but right now I had to test my body paint out, so what a good time. But as you can see, it kind of just softens everything, makes it not sticky. You want to get lots into those sweaty points, like behind your knees. You can see this is why I put a sheet down. Otherwise, you're either gonna have to pay a lot to clean. I'll bring a sheet to the hotel if I'm doing this at a hotel, which typically I am. Just to be respectful, I think you wanna be respectful of somebody's job, and it's not a housekeeper's job to clean up your body paint. So just make sure that you're respectful about that. But I think we're fully covered here, which means we are about done. And so something else you can do, and I do on certain parts of my body, is you can contour with eyeshadow, and then if you feel the need to set it again, you totally can. Sometimes I will actually take this if I'm gonna be at a long weekend con, 4-day con, and I want my makeup to stay on. I'll sleep in my makeup. I know it's a big no-no, but I'll just wear long sleeves, but I'll actually set this again, but just a little lighter this time. And we're done. And so that's just the basic body paint. That's how I like to do it. It might not necessarily be the right way to do it, but it's worked for me. So I figure why not help everybody if I can. You can use a beauty blender, you can use so many different things. There's so many different ways to do it, but this is how I do it.